What's going on, everybody? This is the second to last episode, ranking every Seinfeld episode. We are going from numbers 24 to 11, and the last one will be the top 10. So here we go. Number 24, the Serenity Now from season 9. Frank sets up a new business selling computers and hires George and Lloyd Braun to compete against each other in a sales contest. But Frank's relaxation technique drives everyone nuts. Jerry's new girlfriend encourages him to let his emotions out. Kramer takes Frank's screen door and turns it into Anytown, USA, but the local kids make relaxation difficult, and Elaine has shiksa appeal, and suddenly every Jewish man in New York, including her former boss, is attracted to her. Really, this is known for one thing: Serenity Now! So many good scenes in this. Frank says, the doctor gave me a relaxation cassette. When my blood pressure gets too high, the man on the tape tells me to say, Serenity Now! And George says, are you supposed to yell it? He says, the man on the tape wasn't specific. And then the whole computer selling thing with Lloyd Braun is great. Frank says, 2 months ago, I saw a provocative movie on cable TV. It was called The Net with that girl from the bus. I did a little reading and I realized it wasn't that far-fetched. Yes, Frank is a visionary. The whole thing with Jerry getting mad. It's funny because the girlfriend was Lori Loughlin, which, who was famous for Full House and then famous for that college admissions scandal with her kids. But she encourages him to get emotional, and then he gets crazy emotional and tells everybody he loves them, and he proposes a marriage to Elaine. At one point he says, what is this salty discharge? But this is really known for Serenity Now. Lloyd Braun, basically we confirm that he's crazy. The phone line wasn't even hooked up when he was selling all the computers, and he tells George, Serenity now, insanity later. And at the end, instead of saying Serenity now, Frank says, Hoochie Mama! Number 23, the airport from season 4. Jerry and Elaine are on their way back to New York, but learn their original flight was canceled. Jerry ends up in first class and Elaine ends up in coach. Jerry has a wonderful flight and Elaine has the flight from hell. And in New York, George and Kramer are supposed to meet Jerry and Elaine, but the change in airport has them running all over the place. And Kramer thinks he recognizes someone from his past. This is just a classic episode. So many great scenes. It just worked so well. I like when Kramer and George say, I like to stop at the duty-free shop. I like to stop at the duty-free shop. And the whole thing with George and the convict or whatever, they grabbed the Last Time magazine, and George says, you don't understand, there's a blurb about me in this magazine, and the guy says, a blurb? You're a blurb. But really it's just the whole thing about Jerry being in first class and having like the most wonderful time, and Elaine being in the back and having the worst time ever. I think that's every flight. We can all relate with Elaine. I've never flown in first class before. I could definitely relate with Elaine. It is flying sucks. I hate it. Number 22, the Hamptons from season 5. Elaine, Jerry, George, and Kramer visit friends in the Hamptons who just had a baby. They're there for the weekend, and George's new girlfriend Jane is there with him, even though they've never slept together. Jerry's old girlfriend is there, but trouble erupts when Rachel sees George naked and then giggles. This is known as the shrinkage episode. This is what it's known as. Either that or about the ugly baby, but no, I don't think anybody cares about the ugly baby. It's all about shrinkage. This is the couple that keeps saying, you got to see the baby. But when Jerry's girlfriend sees George naked and she giggles, he's yelling, I was in the pool. And then the scene with Elaine where they try to explain what shrinkage is and if women know about it, and she says it shrinks. It's like, yeah, like a frightened turtle. She says, why does it shrink? It just does. And Elaine says, I don't know how you guys walk around with those things. It's true. Just a classic, wonderful episode. Number 21, the Bizarro Jerry from season 8. Elaine meets Kevin's friends and feels like she's entered the world of Bizarro Jerry, where her world is in reverse. Jerry has a date with Jillian, who has man hands. And George hits on a new sob story to try to get in with a beautiful receptionist. And Kramer gets an unpaid job at an upscale firm. This is one of those classic ones. She has man hands, and the scene where it's obviously no hands, but it's like they found the guy with like the most manliest hands ever and used them for this. So funny. But yeah, this is the Bizarro Jerry. Is I've heard it said that this would have been a good way to end the whole series, which it could have been. Everything is opposite in Kevin's apartment. Instead of a bicycle, he has a unicycle. Instead of a statue of Superman, he has a statue of Bizarro Superman. The Newman counterpart is named Fargus, and he says hello Fargus, and then they shake hands and because they like each other. Feldman is the Kramer opposite, and he keeps instead of just barging in, he always knocks all the time. Just such a great story. At the end, Elaine is the two groups meet, and Elaine goes with the Bizarro people, and George runs and says, can I come over? And she says, no, we already have a George. This is just another. It's the whole thing with George getting into this this underground model world because he has a picture of a model or something like that. That was dumb. And Kramer accidentally gets he accidentally works at this place, and he, then they fire him, and they say, well, what like he's like, well, I don't even work here. He's like, yeah, that's what makes this so tough. Number 20, the library from season 3. Jerry is amazed to receive a letter from New York City Library telling him that he has an overdue book from 1971. He's certain he returned it, but the library's chief investigator, a no-nonsense tough guy right out of a bad Hollywood movie, doesn't want to hear the excuses. George goes to the library and sees a homeless man who looks just like his old high school gym teacher. And Kramer starts dating the librarian, and Elaine is convinced that her boss is out to fire her. This is known for possibly the greatest scene in the entire series, and that is with Mr. Bookman. It is one of the greatest things ever. I've seen your type before. Flashy, making a scene, flaunting convention. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. What's this guy making such a big stink about old library books? Let me give you a hint, Junior. Maybe we could live without libraries. People like you and me. Maybe. Sure. We're too old to change the world. But what about that kid sitting down, opening a book right now in a branch of the local library and finding drawings of peepees and wee-wees on the Cat in the Hat and the 5 Chinese brothers? Doesn't he deserve better? Look, if you think this is about overdue fines and missing books, you better think again. This is about that kid's right to read a book without getting his mind warped. Or maybe that turns you on, Seinfeld. Maybe that's how you get your kicks, you and your good time buddies. Well, I got a flash for you, Joy Boy. Party time is over. I'm obviously not doing that scene justice, but it is one of the greatest scenes. Maybe not just in Seinfeld, maybe the entire season. I really wish they would have brought Bookman back. I know he comes back in the finale, but we don't acknowledge the finale. But it's just one of the greatest things ever. Number 19, the strike from season 9. Kramer returns to H&H Bagels after a 12-year strike. Elaine gives Denim Vest a fake number on her free sub card. Jerry meets a woman named Gwen who is two-faced. And George creates a fake charity called the Human Fund to give Christmas presents at Kruger. He invites Kruger over to celebrate Festivus when he can't cash a $20,000 charity check to the Human Fund. This is the Festivus episode. This is what's known. people celebrate Festivus to this day. It's an actual thing now because of this episode. The way Frank describes it. Many Christmases ago, I went to buy a doll for my son. I reached for the last one they had, but so did another man. As I rained down blows upon him, I realized there had to be another one. Yeah, the human fund is great. The whole thing when he's explaining Festivus, Frank says, I find tinsel distracting. It's made from, the pole is made from aluminum, very high strength to weight ratio. And Kruger says, I find your belief system fascinating. I use that line all the time. But yeah, the Festivus thing. I got a lot of problems with you people, and you're gonna hear about it. And then then he says, Kruger, my son says your company sucks. You couldn't smooth a silk sheet if you had a hot date with a babe. I lost my train of thought. Number 18, the Chinese restaurant from season 2. Waiting for a table at a Chinese restaurant where they've been told it'll be 5 or 10 minutes. Elaine, George, and Jerry find people arriving after them being seated ahead of them. Elaine is starving. Jerry dares her to walk to a table and eat someone's food. He also sees someone who he can't place. George is desperate to call Tatiana, who gets upset when others in the restaurant lobby hog the payphone. I love, I mean, basically, this entire episode was set inside the lobby of the restaurant, and it's basically just, Jerry, George, and Elaine, and then the maitre d', the host. He said that'll be 5-10 minutes. And then of course the famous Cartwright. The George thing, waiting for a phone to use the phone. I mean, that's incredibly outdated. This whole episode is outdated. You could who's waiting for a table now? You could go on any app or something like that and get a reservation. I know not every restaurant does that, but still. But yeah, George utters the line, we're living in a society. Love that. Elaine has a great point. It's not fair if people are seated first come or first serve. It should be based on who's hungriest. Just classic episode. Number 17, the Puffy Shirt from season 5. Kramer's new girlfriend is what Jerry calls a low talker. She's a clothing designer, and his latest idea is a puffy pirate-like shirt. What Jerry doesn't realize is that he agreed to wear the puffy shirt on the Today Show. George has moved back in with his parents, and his mother's driving him crazy about getting him a job. A chance encounter leads him to become a hand model. This is, of course, known as the Puffy Shirt episode. Jerry saying, but I don't want to be a pirate. Classic stuff. But the whole thing with George also is great. The story where he's doing the hand modeling job, and they say he reminds me of Ray McKechnie, and they tell him the tragic story. He said, tragic story, I'm afraid. He could have had any woman in the world, but none could match the beauty of his own hand, and that became his one true love. You mean? Yes, he was not master of his domain. And then Jerry says he got heckled for wearing this shirt. He says, "Avast ye matey? What the hell does that mean? 20 degrees off the starboard bow? A Spanish galleon? There's no comeback to that." Another classic episode. Number 16, the Pen from season 3. Jerry and Elaine visit his parents in Florida, and to attend the dinner in honor of his father, they meet the neighbors, Jack and Doris. And after Jerry admires Jack's astronaut pen, he offers it to him, and Jerry gladly accepts. He doesn't really want to give it to him, but it leads to nonstop gossip, and it leads to an interesting dinner. And Elaine has an uncomfortable night on a pull-out bed, and no air conditioning, and it hurts her back. Classic episode. Take the pen. Take the pen. Any episode involving Jerry going down to Florida, it strikes a nerve with me, because that's how my parents are. That's how I'm sure this is how Florida is in general with old people. These people here, it's so classic. Yeah. Yeah, it's just so good. And at the end, they get into a fight, and and the other classic thing in this episode is, so Elaine is all messed up on painkillers, and they go to the dinner, and they introduce someone. Her name is Stella, and Elaine is a Stella. Classic. At one point before the dinner starts, some lady says, "This better be good. I'm missing Golden Girls for this." Classic. Take the pen. I have the astronaut pen somewhere. By the way, that's a B. You can write upside down on any pen. That's yes. Just try it. Go right upside down. It's nothing. Maybe they make pens better now. Maybe pen technology is better. I don't know. Number 15, the Fucilely Jerry from season 6. Kramer gets a new license plate, but a DMV screw up gives him the vanity plate ass man. George's mom gets plastic surgery. Kramer makes pasta sculptures of his friends and makes one of Jerry using fusilli pasta. Jerry tells Putty about his move, which he proceeds to use on Elaine. He also tells George screws it up, and his girlfriend gets freaked out when he uses crib notes. Oh, so many classic things in this. The ass man license plate, which I have right there, one of my prized possessions. The whole thing, but well, first George is out with his mother, and apparently George's parents split up, and she says, well, I'm getting eye surgery because I'm out there now. And George says, you're not out there. You can't be, because I'm out there. And if I see you out there, there's not enough voltage in this world to electroshock me back into coherence. But the whole thing with Kramer being the ass man, he really embraces it. He gets into doctor's spaces. He gets notes from big butt women, flat bottom girls, you might want to say. The whole thing with Jerry and the move, it's funny when George is messing up and she says, what are you doing? And he says, I'm pleasuring you. She says, it feels like aliens are poking at my body. But the Fusilli Jerry is what this is known for. And Kramer saying, have you ever met a proctologist? They usually have a good sense of humor. You meet a proctologist at a party, don't walk away. Plant yourself there, because you'll hear the funniest stories you've ever heard. See, no one wants to admit that they had something stuck up there. It's always an accident. Every proctology story ends in the same way. It was 1,000,000 to 1 shot, doc. 1,000,000 to 1. Any episode with George's parents is great. At one point, George's dad says, I worked out with a dumbbell yesterday. I feel vigorous. But Kramer stops short in this episode, and Frank gets all mad, and that's why the Fusilli Jerry ends up in his butt. Oh, classic. Number 14, the boyfriend from season 3. Jerry hooks up with Keith Hernandez at the gym. He tries to meet with Keith only to be shunned because Keith is infatuated with Elaine. George tries to keep his employment money coming when he tells the unemployment officer that he got a job with Vandalay Industries, a company that manufactures latex. Kramer and Newman recall an incident in which Keith spit on them after a really bad Mets game. And yeah, the whole thing with Keith Hernandez, classic thing, and the whole thing with Vandalay Industries. This is two of the greatest things and two of the greatest scenes in this series. June 14th, 1987, Mets, Phillies. We were enjoying a beautiful afternoon in the right field stands when a crucial Hernandez error led to a 5-run Phillies ninth, cost the Mets a game. Our day was ruined. Gets me every time. And then Newman saying to Keith Hernandez, nice game, pretty boy. And the whole thing with Jerry and the JFK parody, it's so funny. The spit then came off the rib, turned and hit Newman in the right wrist, causing him to drop his baseball cap. The spit then splashed off the wrist, pauses in midair, mind you, makes a left turn and lands on Newman's left thigh. Now that is one magic loogie. And the whole thing with George and the unemployment people and trying to get he's saying that he almost got a job with Vandalay Industries, which is actually Jerry's apartment. So Jerry has to answer the phone as Vandalay Industries, but Kramer doesn't know this, so he answers as Vandalay. What Delay Industries? And they're like, say Vandalay Industries, say Vandalay Industries, and he's falling and he falls and trips and he's in his boxer shorts. And then Jerry comes in and says, and you want to be my latex salesman. One of the greatest of the whole series. This is actually an hour-long episode, and it didn't like the second half was not nearly as good as the first half, but still classic. Number 13, The Race from season 6. When George notices that Elaine's new boyfriend reads the Daily Worker, he asks if he's a communist. He says he is, which Elaine seems to wear as a badge of honor. Kramer gets a job as a department store Santa, but then he gets a literature from Elaine's boyfriend. George answers a personal ad in the Daily Worker, and soon everyone in the Yankees office assumes he's a communist. And Jerry learns that his new girlfriend's boss is an old high school rival he once met at a track meet and has accused him of cheating ever since. This is basically, yes, the thing with Ned, the communist, and Kramer, and that's all secondary to Jerry and the race. He loves that his girlfriend's name is Lois because he loves Superman so much. The scene where they pretend that George and Jerry don't know each other and they just happen to see each other in the cafe, and George says he's an architect, and he says, I'm an architect. Well, have you designed any buildings in New York? Have you seen the new addition to the Guggenheim? You did that? Yep. And it didn't take very long either. He's busting Jerry's balls. Says, do you ever, hey, do you do, so what do you do? A lot of that. Do you ever notice this kind of stuff? It strikes me a lot of comedians doing that kind of humor now. And Jerry says, yeah, you really got really bald there, didn't you? Yeah. And Jerry keeps saying, I choose not to run. Classic scene, classic line. Number 12, the little kicks from season 8. Kramer's friend Brody forces Jerry to bootleg the movie Death Blow. George follows Elaine to her office and finds out she has the unique dancing style. She starts to get a weird vibe from her subordinates and blames it all on George, and George becomes the bad boy. This is the Elaine dance. This is basically the episode with the Elaine dance. I like when she says, I want to make a toast. Here's to those who wish us well, and those who don't can go to hell. Yeah, the thing with Elaine and the dancing is great. The thing with George being the bad boy, that's funny. But I also love the plot with Jerry and Kramer and the bootlegging the movie. They go to see Death Blow. When someone tries to blow you up, but not because of who you are, but for different reasons altogether. Death Blow. It's yeah. And Elaine acting like the mom, basically making things worse and saying that George is the bad seed, and she catches the girl wearing George's Yankees jacket, and he says, really, it looks a little big for you. Looks like something a short, stocky, slow-witted bald man might wear. But what really makes this episode is the final scene when George tries to be the bad boy by doing bootlegging the videos, and he gets caught, he gets arrested, and then George's dad and Elaine come to pick them up at the police station, and George's dad says, my George isn't clever enough to hatch a scheme like this. Elaine says, you got that right. What the hell does that mean? It means whatever the hell you want it to mean. Are you saying you want a piece of me? She says, I could drop you like a bag of dirt. You want a piece of me? You got it. You have to see the bloopers of this, because I don't know. I don't blame Elaine at all. I don't believe Julia Louis-Dreyfus one bit for being for laughing. How can you work alongside Jerry Stiller and not just die laughing, especially in this scene. I die laughing every time I see this scene. The bloopers are so funny, and the way they cut the scene, I don't think they ever got a good take. They just like isolated the people and stuff like that. It is classic. It's amazing. Number 11, the Bubble Boy from season 4. George and Susan invite Jerry, his girlfriend Naomi, Elaine, and Kramer to spend the weekend at her parents' cabin upstate. Naomi bows out after Jerry makes a comment on her laugh, and Kramer isn't interested. After Elaine goads him into it, Jerry agrees to stop off on the way to visit a fan who is in a plastic bubble due to a disease. They go in separate cars. George drives fast, and Jerry and Elaine end up in the diner, and George and Susan end up at the Bubble Boy's house. This is obviously the Bubble Boy episode. What can you say? It's the Bubble Boy episode. It is also known as the episode where they play Trivial Pursuit, and the Bubble Boy says, "Who invaded?" Oh no, so George says, "Who invaded Spain in the 8th century?" And the Bubble Boy says, "Moors." And he said, "No, it was Moops." I still use that line every single day. Also, when Jerry goes to the diner and they ask him for an autographed picture, he writes, "There's nothing finer than being in your diner." Classic. So there we go. That is number 24 through 11. Next episode, the top 10. Finally done. This has been so much fun watching these episodes. And it's been great. So thank you for sticking with this. And I will see you later.